Disney shocker, Bob Iger back as CEO, Bob Chapek out. I'm not shocked by it, as I've said already. I'm not shocked at all because I predicted the exact scenario that has played out, because to me, it was as obvious as day. Bob Iger has been the CEO of Disney for like 15 years. And there were many people that they were trying to position to be his successor. And that kept falling through. They couldn't find anyone that the board or that the powers that be were going to be happy with. So Bob Iger kept extending his time as Disney CEO. And then out of nowhere, suddenly Bob Chapek gets announced as Disney CEO, and Bob Iger just says, I don't feel like running the company anymore. And nothing about that scenario seemed to make sense. The only thing that made sense was that the coronavirus was becoming a big deal overseas, and that heavily impacted Disney's bottom line overseas, and Bob Iger saw the writing on the wall, so he took a step back. Bob Chapek or Chapstick or whatever his name is became the fall guy, and now Bob Iger gets to come back into the fold while Disney is in a disaster state, and it seems like he's the hero, but in reality, he's the guy that put all of this in place anyway. So again, here's what I said 2 years ago when this story broke. What I think happened with Bob Iger is he stepped away because he knew that what was going on overseas, and Disney is heavily involved with the overseas market from the theme park standpoint and movies. A lot of their movies don't do well here sometimes, but they do big numbers overseas. And what was going on overseas was already having a profound impact on what they were doing. Now, I'm not saying that he could predict to the level of what's going on right now, but there's definitely, he already saw some of the signs, and he jumped ship. So that way, Bob Chapek could then take over. And I don't believe Bob Chapek is running anything. I still believe Bob Iger is in full control. I just believe Chapek is the titled CEO right now, and he will ultimately take the fall. And my theory here is that Bob Iger will then return as the savior once again when all this is said and done, which no one seems to know the answer to that question. And I stand by that 100%, because none of this made sense to me at the time in terms of taking it at face value. It seemed like there was something else going on. Now, there's going to be a bump for Disney, I believe, because the perception is that Bob Iger knows what he's doing, that Bob Iger is, this is the return of the king. So Bob Iger is going to come back and fix all of the problems that happened under Bob Chapek. Bob Iger has done a lot in terms of acquisitions for the Walt Disney Company. He's also made it lose a ton of its personality. He's the reason that a lot of this woke nonsense has continued. He's been covering up for Kathleen Kennedy's failures at Lucasfilm. He's the reason that a lot of this has happened. He's the reason the majority of all of this has happened. So there's not going to be any improvement at the Walt Disney Company from a fan standpoint. Absolutely not. Now, from a market standpoint, I think there probably will be at least a short-term bump, and then we'll ultimately see what direction Bob Iger is going to take things. But I believe that the woke nonsense and the fact that they have alienated so many parents over the years, not with Bob Chapek's policies, with Bob Iger's. Bob Chapek was just a fall guy. That's it. So Bob Chapek is irrelevant in this entire situation. I believe that Bob Iger was always behind the scenes running this thing anyway. That's what I believe. I don't have any proof of that. That's 100% speculation on my part, but I believe Bob Iger was always still pulling the strings from behind the scenes. He just didn't want to be the public fall guy because he knew that they were going to go into an area that Disney was going to suffer, and he didn't want to be the person to take the blame because Bob Iger is not a legitimate leader. He is a coward, and he actually wanted to have someone else take the fall because he didn't want to run the company publicly through this turbulent time. That's the type of person Bob Iger is. He's a politician. He's positioning himself to look good from a market standpoint, and to his credit, he's done a fantastic job of that. He is a very, very tactful politician, and he does want to have a political career in the future as well. I don't know how this all plays into that, but that's neither here nor there at this particular time. But that's what I think right now. I don't think Bob Iger ever stopped being the Disney CEO. I believe that he was behind the scenes running it. Now Bob Chapek gets to walk away with like a $20 million payday.
it worked out pretty good for Bob Chapek. It worked out pretty good for Bob Iger. Everybody, the corporate greed continues to be in a great place with them. So credit where credit's due. I'm not hating. I'm just telling you what I think happened. And now Bob Iger comes back into the fold publicly, but he was always there behind the scenes. You guys let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you very much for checking out this video, and we will talk to you later.